Hi, my name is Amber Summerow, and you're listening to the Homeschool Success Stories podcast, where I interview homeschool moms. Hi, so today I'm interviewing Audry Winston. She is a secular, eclectic homeschooler, and the reason that she started homeschooling is because she would send her son, her older son, on the bus, and he would just be so sad. And she just hated to see his sense of wonder and curiosity disappear. And so she just kind of went headfirst into this homeschooling thing back 15 years ago when there wasn't as much going on. And she really does a great job talking about what exactly she did to keep that curiosity. And her two older kids are 20 and 18, and they've both graduated. One is at George Washington University, and the other is at Berklee School of Music. So I think you're really gonna enjoy hearing what she has to say. So let's go. Let's just get started with, your background, where you are, why you chose to homeschool, and how many kids you have
Great.
homeschooled and all that.
Great. So I have four children and ages 21 down to 7. And we started homeschooling we fell into it. We live in a small suburb outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and we have what people see as a fantastic public school system. People move here for the schools. It's A+ rated. Every levy is passed. Any accomplishments that the high school children have, the entire community celebrates. The facilities are fantastic. And my son was in first grade and doing very well academically and socially. And but by the end of the year, he just looked deflated getting on the bus. And after school, he would talk about how the day was long and not very interesting and asked if he had to go again the next day. And I think at the time I didn't realize how common that is. And he was my firstborn, and I wanted him happy, and particularly happy about learning. So I started looking around at alternatives. And I'm glad I didn't know how common it was, because I don't know that we would have jumped into homeschooling had that not been the case. So we looked at private schools, and that wasn't something I was terribly interested in sort of generally. I liked the idea of public schooling in terms of the diversity of views and part of a larger community. But
it's supposed to be a good thing, right?
Right. Well,
it's supposed to be.
It isn't the schooling part of public school that I thought I was interested in. It was more the public thing, just sort of being a part of the community. And then looking into the public schools, I saw the price tags and then laughed.
Yeah.
That was not something that we were interested in. I mean, that was just, the cost was not something we were going to consider. So a friend suggested homeschooling, and I just kind of jumped in. Sort of in maybe August before his second grade, decided, well, I'll look in to see how to do that, and did. And we, so it was unexpected and sort of sudden.
So you did it when he was starting second grade?
Mm-hmm, that's when we started.
Okay. So he went kindergarten and first grade, and then you're like, he's not excited about learning like he was before. And so what are our options? So second grade, homeschool. Okay.
Exactly. So second grade, we decided to homeschool. And I think at first, I was looking at homeschooling as just a way to make learning what he was learning more fun. So in the very first month, it was things like, instead of writing on paper, we'd write on the windows. And instead of reading in the same classroom every day, we'd read in a hammock. And just sort of trying to, we'd listen to music during lunch, or spend our mornings, instead of chasing around looking for shoes and lunch boxes, we would read in bed together, that sort of thing, just making it more fun. But it very quickly blew into something completely different than what I was expecting.
So so what, like, so did you really follow a curriculum, or you were just kind of doing fun things when you started?
When I started, of course, this was a long time ago. He's 21.
Yeah.
And so, there
Yeah.
really wasn't much internet. There was a few curriculum. I think maybe we followed a math
Yeah.
curriculum, sort of. And, but mostly, and he was really young, and I had, my second child is 2 years younger. And so it wasn't, we weren't really following a curriculum, but didn't even see that was, necessary or an option. But, but it changed so quickly. And really, I think what happened is I started seeing just the momentum of being with the kids and when they're learning and seeing their excitement in learning and getting excited about exploring the world with them changed our schooling into something different. So
you had a younger child. How many younger kids did you have at that time?
So I have sort of two batches of children. I have two that are 2 years apart, and then about 10 years later, we had two more. So the first two.
Okay, so you just had the two. Did you have a baby yet? Not yet.
Yes, yeah, there was 2 years apart. So he was maybe six when we started homeschooling, and I had a 4-year-old. So we were homeschooling together. So I started homeschooling the younger one together. We were doing it together.
Yeah.
And then years later had two more. So, and I'm homeschooling them now.
Yeah. So, real quickly, what is your background as far as, being confident enough to feel like you were qualified to homeschool? Because I know that's something that scares people too, is like, I didn't finish college, so.
Well, no, I think what happened is I was confident because my husband and I had gone a long way academically, but have since learned that was sort of irrelevant. So I think it probably gave me confidence at the beginning, but it's not something I think is necessary.
Right. Now that you've been through it.
Right, exactly. So So I think it helped at first because I knew that I could do elementary, math and English and history. And
that's kind of how I was.
Right. So
little did I know that there is more to it than
right. But that was okay. Like you said, it gave sort of a sense of confidence going.
Yeah. So what is your background then, and your husband's? What is your academic background?
Well, I have an undergrad from UC Berkeley in political economy of industrial societies and a graduate degree from George Washington in Soviet and post-Soviet studies. And my husband is an attorney. So
your husband what?
He's an attorney, so we've both been through a lot of schooling.
Yeah. So you were not scared about teaching elementary school? That was not a concern.
No, but again, I don't know that any of that is required or applicable. I think the only thing that was really ended up being truly applicable is that my husband and I both love exploring the world. And so after that initial time where I was just trying to make learning sort of more fun for my son, I started to realize that doing like the small tasks like that were not as important to us as this sort of overarching goal of having our kids see the world as a place full of things to explore and experiences to be had and problems to be solved. And showing them that doing that, exploring and solving problems and experiencing things is joyful and fulfilling and what life is about to us. And and also showing them that they're capable of doing those things. They're capable of solving problems and exploring the world. And that to do that, you have to gain skills. That's sort of a means to an end, not
right.
So our goal became more to show them how to find and follow passions. And I think there's so many ways that you can do that. I think people do that in a lot of different ways. We didn't do that by a set curriculum. We have kind of our own way of doing that.
So do you want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about how you did that and what your approach was?
Sure. I don't think I was aware that I was doing it this way. It's just sort of through conversations with people, I kind of have talked about it to a point where it sort of it feels like a system in my head, even though it's pretty chaotic. So we sort of do 4 things. And the first thing is that we follow our kids' passions. So when they are interested in something, we dive in. So I have a daughter who was interested in music, and so we incorporated as much skill building into that passion following as we could. And so with music, it would be like history and social studies and math and writing, and another child is into space travel, so it's engineering, and there's chemistry and physics, and somebody's into history, and so researching. And
so then would you kind of just like go to the library and get a bunch of books, or order a bunch of books and kind of do it that way, or
sort of
research curriculum and be like, okay, this fits in, and I can show them kind of why they want to learn this because it feeds into their passion.
Yes. And all of those things. Yes. So that was definitely a part of our time is spent following those. Yes. Through researching things online, getting books at the library, going places, taking advantage of the time we have homeschooling. So, going to concerts, going to museums with exhibits on space, going to historical sites, talking to people that are involved in those experiences, and all the time kind of trying to show them, what it really means to follow this passion that you have, like not, what it is, what it means to follow it, and what people that are following it do, how they spend their time.
Yeah.
So kind of all of that. And it's very hodgepodgey in a way. That portion of it is very hodgepodgey, but I think has been the most meaningful for my kids.
Yeah.
And that, again, just sort of trying to, as much as I can, incorporate them gaining skills that are more broadly applicable while pursuing that interest.
Yeah.
So that's sort of one part of it. Another part is just taking advantage of taking in everything that we have around us, concerts and museum exhibits and festivals, and but doing it very actively, kind of mindfully, and not sucking the joy out of any of it, and not with intensity, but like if you're going to go to an Italian festival, let's find it on the map and let's research a little bit of history. And if you're going to an Irish festival, let's look at the music. If you're let's do the Scottish games at home and use that as an opportunity to measure how far we can throw the pole, sort of take in everything. Go to an art museum and there's a piece that the kids are really interested in, then let's explore that artist and where they were in history, and just do it actively. And if you go for a walk in the woods and you find a frog, let's identify it, and that but try and do it joyfully,
because that's what learning is.
Because
learning is fun. It's fun to understand things and what is this, and and the kids there, you get their attention more when they're out there, when they're in the woods, when they're at the concerts, like, oh, now I see this, now I have more questions, right? Because so that's awesome. I love that.
And also not just that, there's an extra piece that I've seen really play out as my children have become adults, that also just that is a part of their life, is engaging in things. So if where their paths have taken them, they take advantage of the concerts and exhibits and being involved in their what's around them. They're excited to travel, to experience new things. So it's kind of they're living their life. It isn't just to accumulate the knowledge either.
Right. right. It's kind of more inclusive
Yeah. Yeah.
of like everything
Mhm.
because yeah. And as I've been doing these interviews, it's kind of uh, come to me a little bit more like school. They try to recreate what we are able to do kind of naturally,
Yeah.
you know. And I'm like, oh, you know, so we need to not. There's no reason to be scared, but it is scary because we all went to school, most of us. You know, I'm hoping to get a couple that are second generation homeschoolers,
Mhm.
and it's interesting to watch my kids because they don't have the same limits that I've had to
Mhm.
like, oh, it's just life and
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think it does. Yeah, it has affected them. I mean, I mean, I'll finish talking about what we're doing, but that the effect that it's had on, like you said, you want to have second generation homeschoolers. The reason I'm homeschooling my younger two is because my older daughter had said, you know, I want them to have the same childhood that we had,
I
you
know.
know, which is
Yeah.
that was really telling to me that it mattered. So, you know, I mean, that's part of it too, is not just are they trying to recreate what we have outside of a classroom, but also that their life between 0 and 18 isn't just about preparing them for college or careers or
Right.
after it. It's also
Right.
life itself. They're also going there. It's also the journey. I mean, I would, you know, I'm
Yeah.
early 50s, and if right now everything that I did I had to wonder, like, is this really going to help me as, you know, I'm in retirement, like, you know, how is it
Right.
really, that would be a really
Right.
hard and sad way to live life,
It
and
would.
to enjoy
Yeah.
the experience.
Well, and I think especially now as school days have gotten longer and longer in the year too, longer during the day and in the year, and there's less recess, it's like it just gets, I think, harder and harder for these kids. It's like they just need to run around,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
they just need the kids.
Yeah, and
So,
I
yeah.
agree. So, so that's kind of the first two parts of our homeschooling, is sort of experiencing the world um, and following their passions. And then the other couple of parts, one of them, the main thing we do is just chat all the time. We talk about things, you know, we
Mhm.
take any moments that we can to, you know, how does that machine work? Why do you think that bird's beak is shaped that way? Just chat about everything.
Mhm.
You know, how do you feel about what happened to that character in that book? Or, you know, what do you
Yeah.
think that neighbor is doing that? That's sort of, you know, just talking all the time.
Mhm.
And a lot of our great plans for the day, I'll have, you know, some project plan or something I think we're going to do for that day, and then we have a conversation at the table and we jump in the rabbit hole, right? And we just kind of go down that path all day, all week. Maybe it completely changes what we're doing. And I've sort of learned to
That's
be okay
awesome.
with that. So that's a big part of our homeschooling, is just kind of chatting and things that come out of that. Um,
Yeah.
and then the last thing is sort of just filling in things with curriculum, either purchased or not. And
Mhm.
I I try, and how much we use that kind of depends on what the other three parts of our homeschooling have led us to do. So if, you know,
Mhm.
if something we've attended that, you know, if a trip somewhere, if we've done a lot of writing about that, then I don't feel like we need to do the writing curriculum that week. Or, you know, if
Right. Right.
science has led to math. So we just kind of fill in the gaps, and it's hodgepodgey and it's not perfect, but it's
Mhm.
work. I have
Mhm.
kids that
Yeah.
have passions and they're following them now, and
Yeah.
um, so it's
So
worked.
what are they doing? So what are your kids doing now? The ones that have graduated?
Well, one of them is at a conservatory in Boston studying music with an aim at being a musicologist. She's a classical voice person, and
Awesome.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, interested in music, and um, its relationship with society, sort of, of how.
Interesting.
And then I have another one who is in a fantastic university in Washington, D.C., studying international relations. And he is an ROTC cadet. And so he's on
Awesome.
scholarship. And they're, they're home now.
Yeah, yeah, everyone's home now, but
they're home now, but they're out, taking in the world, and they see, to me, it was a success because they went to public high school, but to me, it was a success because they're doing what I had hoped, which is, like I said, they're exploring the world, and they're following passion, and they're trying to solve problems and understand things, and they're vivacious.
Yeah. They like.
Oh, I'm sorry, you cut out. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like they have a love of learning and love of life too.
Yeah, exactly. They're engaged and vivacious, and that's what I had wanted. So.
Yeah. So, so how long did you homeschool them then? Did they both go to high school full time?
Yes, they went through parts of middle school. I think, so my first went back, I think mostly because, as I said, we live in a community where the school is so much a part of the community, and he was involved in sports, and his kids were in school. We were the only people in town that I knew that we knew that homeschooled, and I think he felt a little other and didn't want to feel other. So he wanted to go back, and the transition was easy, nothing smooth, a little weird from the administration, who I think were nervous and not sure what to expect. But he was, the transition for him was totally smooth, and academically and socially and everything else. And then I think my daughter,
that's awesome.
After a year of being home without him, I think she missed him. I think for her, doing it with him was more fun. So then she did a 2 years at a Montessori, and then went into the public schools.
Well, and that's one thing that I want people to know, is that if you homeschool, it doesn't mean that that's all you have to do. It doesn't mean, okay, now I'm a homeschooler and that's all I can do.
Right.
Like, no, this is like, you can customize it for whatever you need. And so I love that you did that. I mean, that's exactly what you did. You were like, okay, they need to be home. And then it was like, okay, now it's time to go back. And
and that worked. That worked really well. I think that I'm happy that they took things with them that I'm really happy that they took with them. I think they had an attitude about learning that I think served them well in school. They weren't focused so much on the grades. They did very well, but that wasn't the goal for them. It was kind of learning what you needed to learn, and their approach to academics I was really happy with. And also they sort of were self-affirmed, so they made really good kind of choices socially and what to get involved in, and I think that served them well too, and still does, but I think it made the transition easy for them.
Yeah, that's awesome, because because it's like, when you get to high school, junior high, you can start to pick classes and pick different things that you can do. And it sounds like they were ready to take advantage of that fully. And I think that's some of the problem in the system today, is the kids, they never had time to just run around and be curious. And so when they do get to high school or whatever, it's just like burnout.
Completely. Or after that, there's a lot of, we have a school system that is especially the high school, they have lots of resources. So they offer
Mhm.
really amazing programs and
Mhm.
opportunities for the
Mhm.
kids that were really fantastic. Um,
Yeah.
but there's also so much pressure to do well, and
Yeah.
that there was a lot of burnout. So they do incredibly well in high school, and then by the time they're done, they're just kind of done. They're excited to go off to
Yeah.
the next
Yeah.
adventure. Here it's mostly to college, to just be done with the
Yeah.
intensity of, which is so sad. So
Yeah, I know. And that was kind of my experience. I got really good at taking tests, and when I got to college, I was just like kind of tired of it.
yeah.
you know? And so when I found out about homeschooling, I'm like, oh, like here we can start filling in these gaps that like I had these big gaps. I don't know why, but they,
They're back. Yeah.
so it sounds like you did it really well because you gave them a nice foundation and you were in an area that had good schools for when they were older and ready. So,
It, that worked out well. I don't know that they would have had to go back. I mean, I think you can do it in a lot of different ways, but I think what I would want people to know is that it is possible to do it in this kind of hodgepodgey, mercurial,
yeah, yeah,
way that does lead you to, there's lots of nights where you lay awake wondering if you're doing the right thing and what you're covering and not covering, that sort of thing. And it can work.
yeah,
It can work.
yeah.
My kids had no problem taking standardized tests and doing well, even though they hadn't been doing
Mm-hmm.
they were in second grade. It's not that
Yeah,
difficult a
yeah,
thing to learn. It's nowhere near as difficult to learn as to learn to how to really explore life and how to really want to
right,
go out and be a part of
right, right.
finding solutions to things. And
Yeah, that is really awesome. I really appreciate that because I think it just shows people like you can see what your circumstances are, see what your kids need, what their strengths and weaknesses are.
Mhm.
Like the school setting is good for them when they're um, so yeah, so I think that's just great to just and that's exactly what I am hoping to show with the podcast is lots of this,
Yeah.
and some people aren't as academic and others are, and like do what works for you and
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah,
So
and it does.
yeah.
There's lots of ways to make it work. I know. I think the way we do it is very sort of disorganized, and that would drive some people crazy. And but it's kind of how it's worked for us. And I think also the other thing I would want people to know is that there's so many choices out there now. So when I homeschooled my first set, there just weren't the kind of choices of curriculum. There weren't Facebook pages where you can find out what somebody else is doing. The sort of the grass is always greener and looking to see what you ought to be doing next. I think there's even little acronyms for it that I'm not aware of. And that's very scary and very overwhelming. I think that it's fantastic. I would take that scary, overwhelming with all of the resources that it allows you and all of the affirmation that it allows you. So I'm all good with it being scary and overwhelming, but it is scary and overwhelming. But I think I would want anyone who's considering this to feel is not overwhelmed by all of those opportunities, to kind of know that there isn't, just like in life, right? There isn't one right curriculum that's going to be perfect and you're supposed to be searching for that right one. There's or one right philosophy. There's a lot out there, and you can pick one and go with it and make it great, or you can change it up all along, and that can work too. I think one thing I wish I would have known that I try with my younger two to remember, though I don't always very well, but I try to remember, is that an unfinished project or a curriculum that you do for a while intensely and then never open again, it's half done, or is not a failure. You've learned so much in it, and it's okay to switch it up and change it. And that it's also okay, you know, there's benefits to sticking to a program for our family. Those benefits kind of outweighed by freshness, but that's okay. You don't have to find that sort of perfect solution, that one road you're supposed to go, you know, your soulmate of curriculum, you know, that's waiting for you and you're supposed to find it. That doesn't, it doesn't have to be like that for it to be right.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I found too is like, we learn, we've got time, you know, and sometimes we'll focus on one thing and sometimes something else. But yeah, because that's hard at first, because it's like I want to learn everything and they've got to learn everything and I've got to teach everything. And yeah, so you really have to learn to kind of, you can't do it all in one day, but you have time. And that's kind of how life is too. So it's kind of a life lesson.
Yeah, I mean, that's like that for parenting in school or out school, that, you know, for parenting in general, like, which I think a lot of the homeschooling is, it's just parenting all the time, but it's not.
It is.
I mean, you have time. You have to try and trust that try and learn to trust that you have time and not, like you said, feel like you're doing it all at once. For me, that's something that's been really hard to accept, but I don't really have a choice. I mean, which is kind of nice, right? At the end of the day, I'm out of hours, so it doesn't really matter if there's something that I wanted to do that day. I'm done with the day and start fresh the next day, you know?
Shoot, that cut out. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Are you there?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, that cut out that last little bit, so I didn't hear it.
I don't remember what I said.
Okay. Well, we'll have it on the other side. Okay. But so how old was your daughter? So when your daughter's son went to junior high, how old were your younger kids? How old were your younger kids when they went to school?
My third was a baby and the fourth hadn't been born yet. The fourth was born years later. So there was a little gap in, well, I just sort of went back to being a mom of infants right as they left. So I still wasn't ever, you know, I still didn't have two moments not being a parent, but but I wasn't doing the teaching part of it as much, you know, I wasn't doing the academic side of it as much. I was with the babies. But it was funny. I had homeschooled initially strictly for my children, like wanting to for them. And when when my children went to school, I had this sort of hole in what I was doing every day. I realized how kind of fulfilling it was for me to be learning and exploring. And you're still doing that with infants, but it was different. I was surprised at how much I kind of missed trying to find a way to explain, you know, something to the children, thinking of different views of how, you know, how to look at a historical event, you know, while I was folding laundry. I didn't have to do that. And I really missed it.
Wow. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it seems hard and people, that's so hard to take effort and thought and stuff, but you know, anything that's hard has great rewards.
Yes.
So yeah, I've been doing it pretty much nonstop.
Yeah.
So I haven't had that, but I have felt, but I know what you're saying, because like when the kids leave too, when they go to college, that was kind of hard for me. Like I succeeded, but I'm really gonna miss them.
Yeah, I know. That's definitely
it's a mean trick.
Oh yeah, that's very horrible. They should warn you when they put them in your arms. You know, don't get attached. So yeah, it's awful.
I know they don't.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I was not prepared for that. Yeah.
But that is hard. But they're still, you know, it's nice having them here now, I suppose, in these unusual circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so your younger kids, so then when they got to school age, you decided to just send them
Well,
to school. So do you want to tell that story? And
well, yeah, so I sent my, things were, by the time they were around school age, my older two were getting ready for college, and we had other sort of outside life things happening. And so I just, our kindergarten is half day. It's not even half day really. It's a couple of hours. So I thought I would send my daughter to that, and that was fine. And then she went through, she went into first grade, and it was sad to me compared to what we were doing at homeschooling. Now it had, what was happening in the school had actually changed a lot since my older two were in school. There was a lot more communal learning, a lot more things that we were incorporating a lot. I'm happy with the changes that were made in public school for the sake of the public school.
yeah.
But it still wasn't the same as homeschooling. And I was kind of debating whether to do it or not. And that's when my daughter had told me that, she said that they would do, she and the rest of my family had said they would do anything necessary to make that work. If I was willing, and they would do anything to make that work. And it was important to them. And it really moved me that my daughter had looked at that experience so positively to feel that way. So so we jumped back in, and it's been terrific for her. She definitely has interests that she loves pursuing and spending her time that way. And then my son, it was the same thing, the half day kindergarten, and now he's homeschooling as well. And so we're still doing sort of the hodgepodge of approaches to learning that we did in the past.
Before.
Yeah.
So is there anything really different that you're doing with the younger kids than what you did with your older kids?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot different just because of the world in technology. I mean, it's so fantastic to have the kids ask a question, and instead of having to wait to go to the library to look up a book, you can just have these amazing resources available all the time. I mean, that's fantastic. It's overwhelming, but so wonderful. And every, every moment something more wonderful is coming out. And so I'm happy with that. There's a lot more curriculum choice that I'm really happy with. I think, I'm loving seeing that the history curriculum that's coming out now is there's many of them incorporate lots more things than they used to, not just different viewpoints, but also the history from different, looking at different groups, and also, putting the history of science and what was happening across the board in science and art, and along with what was happening in politics. So I think that the curriculum is getting so much richer and so much easier to use, so much more choices. So so that's nice for when we use that. That's changed a lot. Also, just the personality of the children are different. So that's changed. There's also a different age gap between the two, and different personalities. So that's different. My first, it was really just like homeschooling, kids of the same age. It just worked out really well. The 2 years, their temperament, and it was very easy. Now this is definitely that there's 3 years apart, and there's more of a difference in kind of their, my younger daughter, my third child, would sit and listen to a story all day, and my son would be jumping in bed going, "Can we be done now?" So there's a different but it's funny because I that does make things in a way harder, but that's okay. We have to. But when I hear people say that they don't want to homeschool because of that, I think I was, when my son was in public school and I went in for a party, and the teacher, who was a perfectly lovely, very loving woman, had, I told her that I was going to be homeschooling my son the next year, that was in her class. And And she said, wow, I don't know how you would do that with 2 children of different ages. And I looked around this classroom, and she alone has 20 children. And some are,
Right.
are jumping up and down, and others are very shy
Right.
in the corner, and some
Yeah.
are, at the party there's games, and some are reading the questions to the game.
Right.
Other ones can't sound out the words, but she couldn't
Right.
fathom how you would homeschool 2 children
Yeah.
of different ages and abilities. And I think that scares so many people. Like, how would you?
Yeah.
And it is more challenging.
Yeah.
It's also, it's.
But it's also, I think they forget that you have one-on-one time. You only have 2 of them.
Completely. And that's only,
And you do one-on-one and one-on-one. And
And sometimes you incorporate it together, and sometimes you
Yeah.
don't. And it, it works. So.
And, a lot of times when it's not their turn to be one-on-one, they're like, yay.
Free time to go and
yeah, exactly. I can go do whatever random thing.
Exactly.
That kids like to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. So speaking of that and kind of how you manage different ages and stuff, kind of what is your schedule like? What has been kind of generally a good schedule?
Schedule.
Or non-schedule.
So what do I think my schedule is going to be at the beginning of the week, or what does it end up being? It really depends.
Or both.
It really depends.
Because sometimes it's good to have goals, right?
Right.
Even if you don't match them, meet them.
You don't. So I do. I think I'm more, and it changes all the time. But I think what most of the time what we are is kind of weekly goal oriented. So if I know that I would like them to do, their math from a set curriculum a certain number of days, and there's a writing project I'd like them to finish, and a science topic that I think we'd like to cover, and I kind of have those as goals at the beginning of the week. And I don't keep those on a planner or anything, because by the end, what we've actually done is frequently totally different from that. So again, if we've jumped down a rabbit hole, or if somebody's really loved writing a story and it turned from a paragraph into a book that they work on for the week, or the opposite, that's something I thought would really be a springboard for something exciting, and it totally falls flat. That wouldn't even be written down at the end of the week as sort of what we accomplished that week. So it changes a lot. I try, just kind of generally to if we're going to do set curriculum, I try and kind of do some of that in the morning, but have it done in the morning and then do other things in the afternoon is kind of the goal. But that seems to be upset so often by the fact that it's a beautiful day out, or but
it's sunny.
It's a beautiful day out, and so we go that day. Gets shot in maybe just a couple of hours, or we find out that there's some really cool exhibit at the art museum, and so we go up, and that becomes our entire day, and then we see a different piece there we weren't planning on. We just so we went right before everything was closed. We went to a local art exhibit to see for my daughter, who was interested in astronomy and cosmology, and the art museum had something on the moon. So we thought that would be great. We'll go. And it turned out there was really only 2 photographs, and that was kind of it. But at the same time, there was this other exhibit by an artist that was just fascinating and beautiful, and we learned about where he was from, and we learned about the museum that he had started in his home country, and we learned about how his technique, and it just became an entire new thing that we hadn't planned on at the beginning of the week. So most weeks honestly kind of go like that, and that's somehow worked. So
yeah, that's awesome. I think that is really awesome.
Well, there's
And I,
there's a cost that, I guess, if you're really wanting your children, I know there's so much, I see now with so many more people interested in homeschooling, and they're constantly asking the questions kind of on the Facebook page of how do I know I'm covering everything, and that.
yeah, that's a big question.
Right. In my home, that doesn't really happen, at least not in the short run, right? So, I mean, some things I try
Hmm.
sort of, math, to kind of keep on what
Yeah,
in
yeah,
grade level. But that's really the only thing.
yeah,
And, we try and incorporate what
yeah.
they need to know about grammar and um, point out literary devices as we're reading, that sort of thing. I try and sort of keep consistent.
Mm.
But
Do
again,
you think do you think that your ability to do that and have that confidence comes a little bit from your own studies?
um, possibly, maybe the confidence to do it, but I didn't study literature. I learned more to look for literary devices in
Mm-hmm.
learning what my children should be getting out of books.
Yeah,
I don't know about, there's so many things that I didn't know
yeah,
about
yeah.
that I am learning to look for with my children. So I
Mm,
a lot of times that's been the biggest um, help from curriculum for me. Hasn't necessarily been
mm.
following the curriculum itself, but if
Right,
I look
right.
at I'll read sort of a philosophy of a curriculum, like what if
Yeah, yeah.
kind of like what it's about, and
Mm-hmm.
um, if their approach if their approach is interesting to me, I'll kind of try and take that and incorporate it. Wow, is that plagiarism? Yeah, but I'll try and take it and sort of,
Yeah,
use that in.
yeah, yeah,
So if I purchase the book, we might never go through the curriculum, but I have learned how to look at that subject with my.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. So, what do you think is the most important, like, how do you, I guess, how could somebody gain that kind of confidence to be able to look at,
Mm.
curriculum and say, or do you think for some people maybe it is better to just go with the curriculum?
Well,
I don't know.
I don't think it's wrong to just go with a curriculum. As I said, that for me, so let's say like a math curriculum.
Hmm.
I think there's some benefit to sticking to a math curriculum from the start to the end. You get the people that put the math curriculum together have a method, and they're teaching the method, and it builds on itself. And there's definitely benefit for that. The problem is for me, the cost of it, just us getting burnt out from it, is
Yeah,
too high. Um,
yeah,
so I would rather that maybe there's a little gap, or maybe there's some things we don't get covered as well as others, or try to, because of just sort of the freshness works for us. And I think that's probably true across the board.
hmm,
I think that if you're
yeah,
true in any curriculum, that if you follow the
yeah,
technology of the designers, if it's done well, there's huge
yeah,
doing that.
yeah, yeah.
It just doesn't work as well for.
And I guess a lot of it really is like you have to kind of trust yourself. Like you were good enough to become an adult. So if you didn't know that beforehand, maybe it's not totally necessary to know to be, a functioning member of society.
I think
But
I think that's true. I also think that's where the overarching goal of teaching your children how to acquire skills and showing them they're
yes.
able to do it comes into play. So if I'm focused
Yeah.
on, but I think this happens in school as well. This is not just in homeschooling.
Yeah.
Your school,
Right.
a school experience is going to have gaps. You're going to have a fantastic teacher for one thing and not so great for the other.
Right.
You're going to be absent the week that they learn to do this. And that's going to happen
Right.
in life anyway. But I think
Yeah.
that's why I think my overarching goal has worked in that, like I know nothing about music. I grew up listening and enjoying music and going to a lot of performances, but what I think I gave my daughter was zero ability and zero knowledge, but the confidence to try it and to show her, oh, if you're interested in this, this is what you would do. This is what it means to study voice. This is what it means to learn how to write, to be a musicologist. Sort of, that's where I think that comes into play. So I think there's going to be gaps, and just try and focus on the getting skills and how to.
Well, and I suppose that if you're willing to homeschool, you're curious enough and you have enough, confidence to recognize that that's what you want to give your kids. And, that's kind of.
Yeah. And you don't, but I agree that you don't have, it's not going to work for everyone, and it's different.
Yeah.
There's different, and if you do homeschool, there's all different sorts of, ways to go about it.
Well, there's lots of philosophies. So maybe I would say keep doing things until you find your groove.
Yes.
And
like
don't give up. Like
you said, you have time. You have time to do that. Even if you're just homeschooling for a year, you still have time to do that, or if you're going to just try it for a couple of years, there's time to do that. And again, it's that sort of, if you look at what's happening in school as well, people don't find someone's education a complete failure because their third grade math teacher, had to suddenly leave, and there was a substitute, and there was a gap, and there was, that happened.
Right.
And no one's scared of that. They're scared of it at home.
Yeah. Well, and interestingly, when we lived in France, we sent all the kids to public school. And when the teacher didn't show up, they just didn't have class.
Yeah.
They didn't have subs, So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
So
it works. I think we're very set. I mean, on
we want to do it right, especially when it's our kids,
Right. Completely.
Yeah. But maybe it doesn't need to be quite so stressful. Like you said, we have time.
You have time. And I think there's also I can't remember what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
I'm saying, I know this is all good, and we're getting short on time. So I'm just looking at these questions. But so overall, how do you feel about your experience homeschooling? Like, how did it turn out?
Oh, fantastic. I mean, it was, the memories that I have with my children are wonderful. Mm-hmm. I think the sort of broadly knowledgeable, passionate, interesting people that my children have become was just what I was wanting. I think that with my younger ones, seeing them already kind of excited about finding passions and kind of wanting to pursue them, and it's been really fulfilling, and it's I wish the only thing that was hard was doing it kind of alone, feeling like I said, my children definitely felt that. I really felt that, which makes you both question if you're, this whole thing is not something you should.
I was going to ask you if your kids had outside activities or co-ops or anything as you've homeschooled.
My children do now. My younger ones do now. We do some co-op things. We started out doing more. I was so excited when I was homeschooling these that there are those opportunities now. So we jumped into a lot of them, and then we kind of pulled away because I felt like it was eating into the most valuable thing that we have, which is our, right. So, so there was sort of less of, we're doing less of that. With my first two, I think there was a mom's coffee group that I belonged to that was 35-minute drive, and that was it. So we didn't really do anything. No, there were classes that were available. Cleveland
Mm-hmm.
has fantastic museums for the size city it is, and so they had classes
Mm-hmm.
that were available for homeschoolers. We also just
Yeah.
joined classes that were not. They did. Um,
Yeah.
we have a big community recreation center here where they do
Mm-hmm.
enrichment classes and sports and that sort of thing. So
Oh, nice.
there
Yeah.
were, yeah, where I feel very, and they were really inexpensive. And so so
Yeah.
they knew people. I think
Yeah.
that helped with their transition into school as well as that.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
we're in a big school district. So, or there's lots of,
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone here has at least 2 children. And so, when they went in, I don't think people even knew that they had been homeschooled really, or, and they recognized
Yeah.
cases. And so that made it easier a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
so we didn't use a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds, and I think that's good for people here too, because I think sometimes how we grow up is kind of all we know. And I know, like for me, we did soccer. So it's like, okay, I guess we need to do soccer. And,
Yeah.
moving to France, like, I mean, there were stuff, but it wasn't the same. It was just like once a week. There
Oh,
weren't like Saturday stuff, and it was like, oh, this is nice.
maybe that's just my age. I was raised in San Francisco and I went to public school, and it was just kind of school, and then that was it. Then you took the public bus home
Mm-hmm.
and you played with the kids on your block outside. I mean, that was,
Yeah.
it was nothing when we were
Yeah.
organized. Like,
Yeah.
so it's a different,
Yeah. And that's,
a lot. But we
yeah.
did
Well,
we did take advantage of a lot of other things. My mother
mm-hmm.
was definitely somebody who was let's jump in the car and go do it. Let's just go see
Mm-hmm.
what this, and we didn't have much financial means, but that desire was definitely there in
Yeah.
her to just go and
Yeah.
do it. And it kind of broadens and enriches your life. And I think that's what I am most happy about with my kids.
Yeah.
When they were, must have been last summer, I had my 2 older ones were home, and we went to a Shakespeare in a park at a local park here. And at the beginning of the show, they have a kind of the green show where the people come out, and they were singing Irish drinking songs before the performance. And my children knew all the lyrics to the songs, and they were laughing that this was like such a homeschool thing for them, because we had been to so many sort of Irish festivals, and but it was so wonderful. It was sort of funny, they're laughing at that's what you learn when you're homeschooling, but it was also so nice because they had that shared laugh about it, that shared experience.
Yeah.
They both knew the songs.
Yeah.
But also that they both could, understand references that are in the performance that we were watching, because we had studied that part of the world together,
Mm-hmm.
and that they wanted to be there, and got so much out of the experience now because of what they had before, and sort of have these wonderful memories along the way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cut out a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're okay. Okay. So let's kind of finish up here with what is the best thing about homeschooling and what's been the hardest part?
The hardest part is feeling like you're the only one doing this. I would love to feel more, that there are more people not only homeschooling, but if there were more people homeschooling, maybe there would be more people homeschooling for the same reasons that I am.
Right.
And then and also just the no time to yourself, but that's kind of, I think that even if I wasn't doing this, I would probably be throwing myself into something else. And it would be I mean,
right. And that's kind of being a parent.
Yeah. I mean, that's
so,
true.
Yeah.
So,
did you come up with strategies to give yourself time? I think that's probably something that's good for people to hear.
Well, I think like most, then maybe this isn't a good answer for everybody to hear, but I think like the way that I approach most everything else too, yes, the strategies are there and the ideas are there, but then that all kinds of fades away, and
Yeah.
life gets in the way and it doesn't really happen. Um, I mean, I try, and
Yeah.
there is some tag teaming with my husband. He'll walk in the door,
Mm-hmm.
out the door. But also, I think one thing that helps is kind of the way that we homeschool is that it might
Hmm.
not be time for myself, but I get to I get to go to the museum and
Yeah,
go to this
that's
tournament.
true.
I'm
Yeah.
going for walks in the nature. I'm doing
Right.
things that are
Right.
really enjoyable and really with people
Yeah.
that I really really like. And
Yeah.
the the mom thing doesn't end, but I'm learning about the world and seeing beautiful things, and trying to let myself enjoy those experiences more consciously than I did with my
Hmm.
so if there's before I would just
Yeah.
go with an aim of like, what can I show them, and now I'm like, okay, I'm showing you this and I'd
Uh-huh.
like to go and look at this too, sort of a
Yeah. Oh, good.
that's
That's good.
it's
I
not
like
really
that.
like a time of my own or a
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and then what are some key things that gave you success? There was like one or two main things. What would that be?
um as I think I've already said these, but taking advantage of everything that's around us, going to things,
Mm-hmm.
seeing things, I think is helped broaden my kids' views of the world, and also made sure that it wasn't just always my view of the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, taking advantage of resources, whether it's online or going to things, I think was key. And trying to always keep in mind that overarching thing of that the skills are not ends in themselves. They're a means to do something else. And anytime
Yeah.
I can help my children see that, is helpful for them and for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to end, what tips or recommendations and do you have for people homeschooling? And then what, any last words, I guess?
Well, I think my tips would be, again, just don't forget to enjoy the ride. These 18 years are not just meant to be, um,
Right.
gathering skills for later. Again, taking advantage of resources. Don't worry if you're running out of steam on something and you switch to something else. It's not a failure.
Mm-hmm.
I think these are things that I probably said, but
Yeah.
I think those are my main pieces of advice. And
Special thanks to Audrey for that interview. I know I'm more inspired to find topics that my kids are interested in, and when they ask a question about it, to actually go and look it up right there. And to use my phone a little bit more, use Google a little bit more, and keep asking questions. So, anyway, I hope you're inspired too, and we'll see you next time.